seriously as the got married, and that is I want my wife to bury me. So believe it or not, I do all that I can to that will take place. So that's it. I'm as serious about that with whom I chose for the presidential my presidential pick, and I will not alter that course. I'm going to stay the course until the end. I will not jump ship, and people need to understand that. And I'm not really surprised about people in the liberty movement acting like people do in the Republican or Democratic Party. It's all the same flavor. We feel that one thing ain't working. Well, where's the press say go next? And that's what we do. And a lot of people listen to the press. They get disheartened. I've heard of and seen people in tears because they thought something did not go their way. It's okay if you get a little down, but you get back up and you keep the fight going. Importantly, we as constitutional supporters, as citizens of the Constitution, need to understand this is more than just about Ron Paul, and we need to look at the foundation that Ron Paul has laid, pick that up, and continue to move forward with that. And I'll give you an example. We have a guy here by the name of Gary Johnson. There's a photograph on Facebook of Ron Paul and I with holding the guy's hat. This guy won here in Georgia. Trust me, when I say it was boots on the ground, it was boots on the ground. I mean, people were out there knocking on doors, signing, making phone calls. This guy, Charles Gregory, he beat a 7-term inning nothing here in Georgia, but just being the status quo. These are the types of victories that we need, because guess what? If Ron Paul were in the White House without people like Charles Gregory, we couldn't get anything done. Sadly, we did not win with Greg Palin, who is in my district, but there were boots on the ground. I've still got his sign out there in my front yard. And, the election is passed. But there are other people, Tom Davis, that I went to Columbia with and met Ron Paul, who was there to support Tom Davis. They are speaking of this guy going up ultimately against, and I forget the politician's name, but it's Lindsey Graham, I believe that's the player speaking of. But this guy is vehemently stating, I support and I endorse Ron Paul. Ron Paul is my guy. And he's not afraid to say, I am a liberty-loving constitutionalist. And so, people don't realize how important the ground wars movement is, but this is something we have to keep going. And for me, if Ron Paul does not make it to the White House, what he has done to lay the groundwork, to me, this is our Boston Tea Party. That's what this is. Nothing short of it being our Boston Tea Party. But what's going to determine whether or not our Boston Tea Party is successful is whether or not we get up off our butt, continue to do what Ron Paul started. Remember, many of us, myself included, I only got on this bandwagon last October when I started researching and studying Ron Paul. So I'm new to the liberty movement per se. However, if I stop because Ron Paul does not get to the White House, then I'm a worthless piece of excrement, and I'll leave that. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the main goal is to get Ron Paul in the White House, but we have to understand it's a long process of actually restoring the country back to a republic, and it does start at the ground level and work our way up. That's why I'm running for city council. I hopefully can one day make it in there, make an impact on my city. I do live in a very conservative city. We have some of the lowest taxes in the whole state of Minnesota, and it's going to be a little bit harder. I'm going up against a person who's been on the board basically almost as long as I've been alive. So it's going to be pretty hard to get this guy out. By the time the election comes around, I'll be 24 years old. This guy will be in there for almost 20 years. But it's just everyone has to start somewhere and try to make an impact. Just because the president doesn't mean everything is going to fall into place. The Congress and the Senate are going to start obeying the Constitution. They're going to start doing their jobs. All of a sudden, we're going to have balanced budgets, and it's not going to happen overnight like that. Even if Ron Paul got in, it's not the final, I guess, piece of the puzzle. We need Biden getting the right people into the Senate, into the Congress, into state Senate, state Congresses, everything all the way to low, from city council all the way up to nation and the federal government. We can't stop just because we get Ron Paul in there. So, but TMOT, I wanted to read something. I've been getting probably 5 to 10 pieces of, not really hate mail, but constructive criticism, I guess. And this one is literally like a 5-pager, but there's one paragraph that I'd like to read to you. He addresses you and I, because evidently he doesn't like that you don't support Gary Johnson, and he doesn't like that I don't like Gary Johnson. And now he's addressing you and I in this. He goes, I really expect more from both of you on this as leaders and voices in the liberty movement. That card you mark up will go straight into the trash can, because I told him I'm going to take a Sharpie marker and write Ron Paul on my ballot if I have to. And that will be how your whole run with Ron Paul ends, in the trash. There are no principles, honor, or valor in that. Anybody who thinks so are just trying to deal with themselves without considering the rest of the people in the movement. To me, this is a giant fail, and all this, me, my way, it's about doing me, doing my thing, blah, blah, blah. It's just horse pucky piling up. It's really slightly diminishing my view of TMOT, because these hard-headed, stubborn people may be predictable, but they are not reliable to make adjustments where needed. Makes you wonder how many times in his life those bad tendencies have been the reason himself to others have suffered. Kind of like this. Honey, are you driving into a wall? This is the way I want to go, and I'm only doing things my way. Bam. You see what I mean? So basically, he's trying to say that you and I are not flexible, and he wants us to roll with the punches and just change our principles, evidently. So all of a sudden we can lower our standards and then vote for Gary Johnson. Is that how you kind of see it the same way I do?
Well, are riding on the same ship on that one. As far as this guy goes, I think what he fails to understand is it's about not compromising. He says it's not about principles, but in fact it is about principles. It's about not compromising our principles. For bottom line, Gary Johnson will not win, okay? In 220 years it has ever won. That's a fact. Fact number 2, our two-party system has it so rigged that they will never have a chance. It's always a circus trading clowns from two sides of the fence. That's all it's ever been. And the only way we will be able to change that is by getting people elected to both parties who will render the two-party system moot. These are facts that cannot be denied, period. George Washington, and I've said this before, warned us about the two-party system. So when I go in to vote, even if I were to vote for Gary Johnson, whom I know will not win, what it will say is I compromised my principle. I started out supporting Ron. That's who brought me to the dance. He has got my support until this is all said and done. And he will continue to have my support in how I fight on the battlefield. So this guy who says that it's my way or the highway, if that's the way you want to perceive me, then perceive me. It's my way or the highway when it comes to compromise. And let me tell you, I've been hearing some things in the background. This is another fact. Ron was offered a speaking spot with the RNC. However, there are several rumors as to what may be going on behind the scenes that I have not heard. But the one that I have heard, and other rumors, and I will tell you that one, is that Ron Paul will not be speaking because Ron Paul said, I will not shut up about the Fed. I will not shut up about these wars. I will not shut up about any of the things that I have been talking about for the last 30 years. I will continue to stand on the principles that I've always stood on. So you either accept me in whole, or then I just won't be speaking. See, that's the kind of the harm I'm talking about when it comes to not compromising your principles. The man would say, then I won't speak. That's how important his principles and his integrity is to him. Somebody saw a picture of Chuck Suter, who was responsible for me even getting over to Columbia, South Carolina in the first place. And we just had this look of admiration because we saw this integrity standing right with not compromise himself. And some knucklehead on my Facebook page, you and Chuck look like y'all are ready to fall down and worship. And I said, I said something to him, but what he doesn't understand, I worship no man. I told him this was a look of admiration for integrity. The only entity that I worship is the Lord my God. That is it. However, I admire men of integrity because it gives me something to strive towards. Because I have been an individual, who lacked commitment, who lacked integrity, and in certain areas of my life, that's my past. And so every time I see a man that's standing to it, especially one that's been doing it in politics for the last 30 years, I know for a fact it is humanly possible for a person to have principles that they don't compromise under any circumstances. And so I'll turn it back to you, Matt.
I mean, you're exactly correct. I think that I would react the same way as you with admiration, but yet at the same time, I think I literally would be like in awe of actually seeing Ron Paul, someone who's not corruptible, someone who has stuck to his morals and his principles for so many years. I think it would just be mind-blowing. I've never had the chance to meet him, and I really look forward to being down in Tampa, going down there, going to his rally on Sunday. And I'm going to go there so early. I'm going to try to get one of the first front rows right behind the delegates, so I have a good chance at maybe shaking his hand and getting a photo with him. I highly doubt I'll actually be able to talk to him for more than 10 seconds, but I don't know. It's not very often in my lifetime that I'll ever get to meet a person and get to shake his hand with someone who's so principled, honest, and just someone who has dedicated his life to serving us. So I think it will be an honor. It'll be one of the highlights of my life going down there. I can tell my kids, hey, look in the history books. Hopefully Ron Paul will be talked about well in the history books, because when we actually do end the Fed and our economy does go up and we get out of this deep, deep depression, Ron Paul will be seen as one of the most knowledgeable before his time politician. Just, he's out of this world. He's so far ahead of his time. He's nuts. That's why everyone perceives him as being nuts, because he's so far ahead of the majority of the mainstream media. He's just the crazy one. He's the outsider. But I think that it'll be amazing to be able to tell my children someday, we met Ron Paul. I supported Ron Paul. I was one of the men on the front lines fighting for Ron Paul, and we never gave up no matter what. So I just think that we're living in either some of the worst of times or some of the most amazing times probably in the history of America, because this could be the second revolution coming around now that we're talking about. I'm not talking about a physical fighting guns revolution, but I think we're in some type of renaissance period where we are wakening up again. We're being reborn. America is going to become the great America that it was once before, and I think it's amazing and it's electrifying to be living in these kind of times. So I'm really glad to be part of this, and people like you, TMOT, are the reason why I continue to do this, to see that I'm not the only one. There are other people out there fighting. Some people do it behind the scenes, like the majority of people in this room. Not everyone has to get up on YouTube, and not very many people have the voice and the face like you do, TMOT. I got a face for radio, and you got just the whole persona of you. That's just this calm, chill, relaxed kind of aura around you that people want to listen to. They gravitate